May we make a suggestion? Take your phone off the hook. Somebody might call during the next hour or so and interrupt your fun.
Getting down. $1 million.
Bigger guests, bigger audio. You're listening to the West Coast Truth with Russell Scott, Season 4.
Tell me about yourself. A lot has been said about what you're doing now, and I think most people listening to this program will have heard the name Greg Palast, but I want to hear the backstory. What happened? Who are you to the point where you become famous?
None of your darn business. No, I used to be that way, but
you're
now,
investigating people. Now it's your turn.
Yeah. And like most people, I make it up as I go. But by the way, I should at least, if people don't know me, I'm an investigative reporter. I work for BBC television, mostly the Guardian papers out of England, because, investigative reporting is illegal under Patriot Act 3 in the United States. So, but how did I end up there? I started on the West Coast. In LA, the bunghole end of Los Angeles, Pacoima, North Hollywood, mostly Chicano neighborhood. And, we were tagged as losers. I went to Poly High, and we didn't have advanced placement classes, and we were just supposed to go to Vietnam after we get our girlfriends knocked up, cruise up and down Van Nuys Boulevard, and if we didn't get killed in Nam, we would go work at the Chevy plant in Van Nuys, which is now closed. And we didn't know that at the time, but so we were the losers. We were the cannon fodder of the system. People talk about the 1% and the 99%. We were the 1%, the other 1%. And so I developed a great sense of resentment. I don't like blood, so I can't kill these guys the 1% who did this to us, but I can write about them. I can hurt them. My motives are not pure. I do investigative reporting out of a sense of envy and revenge. And I clawed my way into, I conned my way into top schools. You'll read that in Vulture's Picnic. I use every flim-flam manner I have. I mean, look, my daddy wasn't named Bush, so I couldn't be dumb as a pet rock and still get into Yale. Right? Or John Kerry, who is smart as a bottle of ketchup, or Al Gore, who thinks he's brilliant, but
John Kerry's IQ is 57.
Yeah. I like that. That's good. How many people are going to pick up that one? We don't know.
Right. Not John Kerry.
Right. Exactly. And I should be careful. He gave a good review of my book, Armed Madhouse, because if you remember, there was a kid who was tasered, asking Kerry, "Why did you concede the election?" And the Washington Post said he's holding up a strange yellow book. The student Andrew Meyer. Well, the strange yellow book was Greg Palast, Armed Madhouse, which is a strange yellow book, and it talked about the theft of the election. It had a chapter called "Kerry Won," and so he kept saying, "Why did you concede? If according to this book by Greg Palast, you won. It was stolen. And have you should read this book." And then he wouldn't stop, and they zapped him, despite the fact he said, "Don't taser me, bro." By the way, he made the point to me that even when he's being tasered, he refused to drop the book to the floor. It was like the American flag, right? Kerry actually said, "I've read the book. It's great. And it has a great chapter on the election." Well, of course, it said Kerry won. But he never answered the question, why was he such a weenie that he gave up? Anyway, so it's weenies like that. Because it's not Kerry's votes that I care about, or when Gore v. Bush. I don't care about Al Gore that he got the election stolen. It was black people's votes, poor people's votes, the kids I grew up with votes that got not counted, and they got shafted. and then sent to Iraq. So I don't like these guys. And I don't like the guys on the other side. I don't, Mittens, Romney, right? So I'm doing an investigation of him and his billionaires behind him, And so what I want to do is expose these guys. I want to pull down their pants publicly. And that's why I wrote Vultures Picnic. That's why I wrote Our Madhouse. And now, actually, a few minutes ago, I just finished my latest book, Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, about these guys. They steal our money. They steal our elections. And there you go. So me, I was very resentful. I grew up in this poor thing. I conned my way into UCLA, then Berkeley, then the University of Chicago, and then, did some flim-flam. By the way, I never graduated high school. I just walked my way into the universities through various scams. Walked my way to work at graduate school at the University of Chicago, and I worked under Milton Friedman. Again, another con I pulled off, but I got in with Friedman. I was working undercover, by the way, for the labor unions of Chicago, for the steel workers and auto workers and meat packers, who had sent me in to see what this Milton Friedman guy was up to. And I said, no, you know what? I'm talking to Friedman, who really likes my stuff and wants to co-write some stuff with me. And he says, but I'm thinking, here's a right-wing fruitcake, and the only people listening to him are Margaret Thatcher and Augusto Pinochet, And I said, who's going to believe Milton Friedman and this kind of fruitcake, if I steal as much as I can, the world will be better off philosophy? I said, that's not going to fly. Everyone's going to see through that free market mumbo jumbo con job. And and now it rules the planet. I mean, basically, Thomas Friedman is channeling Milton Friedman, and these are the Democrats, right? And Obama's is a Friedmanite, basically. They're all been hypnotized by this BS. In fact, in my new book, in Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, and I'm going to keep plugging it because it's very important. And in Billion, I have a section on Archer Daniels Midland, ADM. If the people that own National Petroleum Radio, it's a chemicals and farm products trading company, which is their cover for basically a criminal conspiracy, and therefore that's why they have public radio in their power. But ADM, it's founder is a guy named Dwayne Andreas, and as I tell the story in the book, he laid a $1,100 bills on Nixon's desk in the Oval Office, $100,000, which funded the Watergate break-in. And Andreas once said, "There is no free market except in the speeches of politicians." So I get myself mobbed up with Milton Friedman, learn a lot about how the insiders operate, get into the business school too, and meet some like the head of Citibank and all these characters. And then I go and work for labor unions. I become the first University of Chicago MBA and PhD to go on food stamps, because I wasn't going to. I'd been given an offer by Goldman Sachs because I wasn't afraid of numbers, and you're 23 or something, and you're offered what is in today's money, $250,000, $500,000 a year to be a trainee with guarantees of $1 million incomes, right? And and there was a couple of my friends who were like going for this, like, well, we'll pay off our student loans, we'll make a few bucks, and then we'll quit. But I realized that no one has ever escaped from a prison made of gold. If I got into that, I would say, oh, God, I need one more portion, then I can quit. And so I went on food stamps. And so I ended up thinner, sexier, happier, drunker, because as a journalist, you don't have to show up sober in the morning for work.
Are we seeing the thinner version now? That's who you're referring to?
Well, actually, Ms. Badpenny just had a complaint about my profile. And she's my chief investigatrix. And you know, I have well, let's put it this way. I've gained like about, as if you're British, you would know this, about 1.5 stone in the last year or so. I don't, it's I have no excuses for this. But I do, and I don't think I've ever mentioned this on the air before. There's a lot of groupies, that hang around TV journalists and stuff, like Anderson Cooper. But they come to me too. And this one woman,
Slightly different demographic.
you might have to cut this out. I don't know about your audience demographic, but I don't even know I'm bringing this up, but what the hell? One woman comes up to me. They always, when I'm signing books, and pass me their phone numbers and stuff like that. I don't do that stuff anymore. I don't gather blondes anymore. Unless I'll make exceptions if you're listening. You, Annette, with the long legs. It's okay. You come up to me after I give a talk. It's okay. I'll sign your book. But the one woman came up to me and said, "I've been masturbating all week, waiting for tonight." And I said, "Huh, what a coincidence. So have I." But okay, smart aleck. And she said, and then she looked at me and said, "Thinking about you." I said, "Thank you." And she said, and then she looked down at me and she said, "You could do a few sit-ups, Well, I guess
you get a pass because you're famous, but you could try hard.
Yeah, I guess I look. Yeah, I'm unlike most people. I actually lose. The camera takes 20 pounds off me, so
This should be on video then.
No, then I can't lie. So
you're basically already an undercover journalist of sorts for the left wing, for the Labour parties.
No, I hate the left wing and the Labour parties. It's just that the rich people tend not to be in the left wing or the Labour parties. But and in fact, it's very interesting that you mentioned Labour parties, because of course I work out of Britain, and it was the Labour Party that went after me. It was I was, if you'll see in Vulture's Picnic, I have that a chapter in which I'd gone undercover and I had exposed Tony Blair, to whom I'd, by the way, been a consultant and advisor, so it was easy to get in. I tape recorded his inner circle, his top boys in his cabinet, and the lobbyists that he was close to, and basically they agreed for a pile of cash and influence to sell Enron the entire country. Now, when I say sell Enron, that's because I pretended that I was Enron's consultant. and for my confederate, a wonderful guy named Mark Swedlin.
How do they not know? You're full of shit.
Oh, well, this is interesting because I had to. Here I am. This is one time in which I'm going undercover with my own name. I'm my own cover. Okay. Now, these guys knew me as a consultant to Blair, and that I was really connected. I knew all about the power industry, which I've been investigating. And, I remember I'd done an investigation, the Exxon Valdez against Exxon, British Petroleum. But they figured, I was actually quite wealthy at one time, one of the top paid investigators in America of white collar crime, and I had a swimming pool and a place on the beach and did all this cool stuff. And, then I took my vow of journalistic poverty. That's all gone. But if I need to get wet, I just hose myself down. But forget the pool. But at any rate, they knew that I had once been a very successful consultant, and that I had and connected to Blair. And a lot of these guys did all this stuff and still wrote newspaper columns, did everything else. In Britain, people run business. An MP unlike a member of Congress, can actually be on the board of directors of a company, trade stocks. Insider trading is not illegal there. And it's amazing. I mean, I mean, I interviewed when I was doing my BP investigation. I'm sorry,
Right up Milton Friedman's ass, eh?
Yeah. So, and so I said, by the way, I used Milton Friedman's name a lot to get into right-wing circles and get information.
Mm-hmm.
And I had even put Friedman on the air, so I could even say, oh, I was just talking to Milton, blah, blah. But what I did was I said, hey, listen, I've got, my place on the beach. I've got my ponies to take care of, so I still do a little bit of work on the side for my boys. Let's keep it quiet. They know that I've got a connection to Blair, but, I need a little help. They need a little help. And so in other words, they bought it, even though they knew that I'm writing for The Guardian, but they do this backrooms deals anyway. In fact, one of the creepy guys I was working with was writing for the Express, the different, one of the other papers, and yet they're doing these backroom deals. In fact, they use their columns as a way. They get paid to stick stuff in their columns for politicians and corporations, and no one says a word. Everyone knows they're doing it. It's perfectly legit in England, even though the journalism is better there, but it's far more corrupt. Maybe corruption is needed to make journalism good, but that's not a suggestion. But at any rate, so I'm doing this. I'm telling them about, that I need to pick up some extra loot. So they understand corruption. They understand corruption very well. And then I said to them, to the to Blair's guys, look, if my guys hire you, pay you £5,000 a month, £10,000 a month, what do I get? We have to change these laws, A, B, C, D. Oh, we position you. I said, look, let's cut the bullshit. I want to know what you've changed for the money. And they said, oh, we did this and this. I said, you know what? So then they started telling me all the creepy deals that they've done for Entergy Corporation, which is Hillary Clinton's clients. Remember, let's not forget that. They were in power at the time. So Hillary Clinton's characters, et cetera, and other Enron deals, and Tesco's a supermarket chain, and all this crap. And I said, okay, that's fine. Anyone could claim that. Oh, they even said that they passed secret information about the British budget in advance to U.S. banks, and they gave me examples, which of course these guys could trade on. They're traders. They can make millions and millions in a day by trading in advance, knowing what the prime minister is going to say the next day about the budget, right? So I said, yeah, everyone talks a big talk. I want, but I got to tell you, I'm working for these Texans, right? They don't want to hear any BS. These guys just started wearing shoes last year. They want to see this in writing. They want absolute proof that when they put down the bucks, they get the bang. And these guys faxed me like proof of the inside deals in writing.
Jesus Christ.
And then I busted it open. Well, then there's only one thing to do when you get caught with your evidence hanging out, is you go after the guy who catches you. So they went after me. So there was like a full page photo of me on the front cover of the Mirror, big screaming headline, "The Liar." And as
well, let's talk about the scandal.
Yeah.
After the break. Okay.
Okay.
We'll take our first commercial break. Continue on with what you're saying, and we're going to segue into some of the scandals that we've been hearing about with Rupert Murdoch and Piers Morgan. So just pick up where you left off.
Actually, they're right in the center of these scandals. So the first thing is I expose that Blair is up for sale to U.S. corporations cheap. It's screaming headlines all over the paper for weeks. So what they have to do is they have to go after me, which they do. And one way, there's many ways to go after me. This was not the least unpleasant, which is that there had been one of Tony Blair's, rising young stars in the party, because he needed females and he needed black people. So he had a woman I call Miss Jamaica, an absolutely stunning woman. And I only say stunning. This is not to be sexist. It's an important part of the story. because I actually advised her to go into politics. I said, because she said, "How do I get inside? You're inside. How do I get inside?" I said, "Well, you're a twofer. Just offer yourself as a, you've got a black face and a vagina. I mean, you're in. The Labor Party doesn't have that." So they moved her right up to the top of the party structure. But then, of course, once I exposed these guys, now I was the party's enemy. But she was still kind of my friend. She wanted to get together with me. She was had been sticking her hand in my pockets to figure out, boy, this program's getting very salacious. It's usually unusual for my interviews.
I was going to say it's actually rather tame for our average program.
Taking the jewelry and saying we ought to get together, okay. And so I figured, wow, now that this whole thing has exploded, I got a hold of her and I said, "Can I take you to what's this big, like the huge event at the party convention called the New Statesman Ball?" And I said, "Has anyone invited you?" She said, "No." I said, "This is unbelievable that you're Blair's gal and he doesn't take you to the ball." And I said, "Okay, I'll take you to the ball." So, and we'll discuss it in your room beforehand. And she said, "So come to my room." So then, as it turns out, she was being minded by a couple, because she was there was a huge election. She was running for chief of the party, by the way, a chief of the party. And so here she is, woman running for chief of the Labor Party, and she's going to the ball with the number one enemy of the party, right? And her minders found out about it. I said, "What are you doing?" Okay, so I figured, okay, I'm going to get the inside information from her, and it's easier to get information from people when they don't have too many clothes on. And so she leaves. So she leaves a weird message for me. It says, "Here's my key. Come up to my room." And I said, "This is weird. What do you mean come up to? And just come in." It's what is it? So I go up to her room. I smell, and like I say in Vulture's Picnic, I say, like a journalist should know this smells bad. But I said, but then, the memory of her hand, of Miss Jamaica's hand in my pocket, led me to take the key upstairs, open the door, and then, of course, and an audience would be screaming at this point, "Don't open that door!" And I open the door, and then the audience would start screaming, "Don't take off your clothes!" So of course I take off my clothes, and in walks Miss Jamaica's husband.
Oh, no.
And I'm laughing now. This was not funny at the time.
Hello, Mr. Jamaica. Yeah.
With
man.
the hotel clerk. So what it was is that when they found out that I was going out with her, they set me up to do that. Now, they were trying to set me up to say that I had, was going through her stuff to get information on Blair. But in fact, once I had, thank God, gotten my pants up before the door opened, because I changed to a suit, and so then they got the idea. Oh, I was there to, obviously, Mr. understood what I was going to be doing with his wife. Apparently, I hadn't been the first one there. It was a well-beaten path, but I couldn't believe it. I didn't know she had a husband. How could she do this to me? I mean, that's not fair. She knew I had a wife. So then so then they made it. So the next, so I get totally wasted after this, totally wasted. And I am so hungover that I wake up early. I get this call in the morning. The brown carpet in some cheap hotel in Blackpool, England is attacking me. And I'm on my hands and knees answering a call from the Labor press office to come down there. I go down, try to get some coffee in me, and look at the paper headlines. And there it says, "Sex Scandal." And it's like, huh? And then I see my picture and Miss Jamaica. Page after page. The entire front page of the Mirror, whose editor is a guy whose name is Puss Moron, though in America he changed it to Piers Morgan. Of CNN, which used to be a news broadcaster, so they just try to ruin me doing this, and thank God I got out of it. And then it turns out it all got, because I did my, I exposed the whole thing in the end as a setup by the Labor Party, and it blew up on them, and her career was destroyed. I feel very terrible about that because I wanted it demolished. And so that, but Piers Morgan, pus moron, he is overheard by a Guardian columnist telling Tony Blair's press spokesman, an evil little spider named Alistair Campbell, that Campbell's thanking him for taking care of me. And so then Puss Moran goes on a whole rampage about me, and before they had full page pictures of me on the front page of The Liar. They had, on and on and on, sex maniac, liar, blah, blah. So, but the important thing is that they still couldn't shake the evidence that their government and our government in America is bought and controlled by these billionaire operations. That was the deal. And now in the case of Murdoch, and in fact, part of the story I got undercover, and I don't know why people are so shocked, Murdoch using influence. I have on tape Murdoch's paid lobbyists telling me in detail how they got the laws changed by Tony Blair. In detail. And I put this in the papers. It's like people have amnesia. It's like, oh, Murdoch has influence that he paid for it. He basically said, and by the way, I mean, they talked about, European policy. It's not about policy. Murdoch got a rule change which allowed him, just like in the U.S., to own several media properties, which is against the law in Britain like it is in the U.S. In the U.S., he used his influence to get Colin Powell's son, Jonathan, to remove the limits on how much he could buy. He also pretends to be a U.S. citizen. Foreigners can't own U.S. media. It's against the law. So he's a pretend American, so they do the same thing in both places. But I actually had the audio tapes. These lobbyists said, oh, we didn't say these things. He's making it up. But see, what they didn't know that they were being recorded. And in Vultures Picnic, actually, it's an interesting thing. If you go into vulturespicnic.org and go into films, it says the films. I will play you some of the tape recordings where the guy says, well, I really have to be careful about what I say over the phone, and my tape recorder is going, right? And then he wasn't careful at all. And you'll see some pictures in Miss Jamaica, nothing too revealing. And then and you'll hear some great music by a great punk star, Miss Bad Penny, our chief investigatrix. That music is by the way, from her own band. I only take musicians. I don't take any journalism students on my staff. Journalism students are suck-ups, and they're building their resume, and they're pinheads who go to press conferences and rewrite press releases. And so if you've gone to journalism school, as far as I'm concerned, you're used material. You are not halal. And so I use musicians who don't sleep and know that the show must go on. So we have some great rockers on our staff, and we actually have some successful rockers on our staff. I mean, Jello Biafra and Willie Nelson's done some research for us. And,
wouldn't you say in some ways, though, that music has always been a form of journalism?
Well, it used to be.
Through the expression of the lyrics, and
Yeah, it was. I mean, but music's always been commercialized. It's always been the Samizdat artists. Like, for example, we work a lot with Boots Riley and the Coup, and Boots is one of the leaders of the Oakland occupation, Occupy Oakland. And, a guy like Boots Riley is the real thing. And he's been working with Joe Morello. And it's like, so the musicians kind of get it. Also, musicians, I've usually had a period of struggling where they've had to, eat the dog. Whereas these kids who graduated from Columbia Journalism School, where they went on Daddy's Trust Fund, they don't know crap, they don't know how to wipe their own butts. So, so that's the problem. It's journalism school has produced what we laughably call American journalism. So that's why I despise it. But what can they do? They learn now how to, they all want to be Anderson Cooper, who which is basically about, bleaching your teeth. Yeah,
He's got the daytime show now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a soap opera. I shouldn't knock him because then I can't get on the air. But you know what? I got to tell you, I know that my publisher is going to have a heart attack today when he sees Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, because it talks about the New York Times being not only lying, but being lazy asses and racists. And the Times? We always borrow cups of sugar from that dark family at the mansion next door. Yeah.
Yeah, the Huxtables. No.
Right. So it's like, right. So, yeah, so this has been a problem. And of course, I've been locked out of U.S. journalism, except for your wonderful program.
That's why we're in Canada, though.
Yeah. Yeah, but see, they can't. You hop that electronic Berlin Wall, you little sucker. I know what you're up to. They can't. I know exactly what you're up to.
Hey, listen, do you have dirt on Piers Morgan?
Oh my God, he is dirt. I mean, do I have it? Is there anything? I mean, he's one of those things you can't wipe him off because it's just dirt all the way through. Plus moron is So first of all, on the current thing, besides what he did to me, all right, we do know he bragged to the host of my show is Jeremy Paxman, and he bragged to Paxman about being able to hack phones, hack people's messages, because a lot of people don't change their code. So he calls their phone number and dials 0000, and gets messages of the rich and shameless. First of all, I'm a bit annoyed with Paxo, my colleague, because why did he wait to go to why didn't he say this on the air? Why did he wait to be called into a committee? I don't like the clubbishness between the politicians and journalism ever. There can be no deals. When politicians say, well, this is off the record, I say, then don't tell me. You talk to me. It's on. I don't take off the record. Nothing. That's baloney and bullshit. Now, but the other thing is what they didn't know is I know. See, Murdoch is being skewered, which he should, but no one has actually said that Murdoch personally listened to people's messages or hacked into their phones, okay? Or even his dissolute bonehead son James, that he listened to phones or ordered it. He kind of knew, he clearly knew what the heck was going on. That how else do they get this information on these celebrities, okay? And by the way, just so you know, I don't have a problem with hacking phones if it's in the public interest. This is in titillation's interest. This is if I could hack into Downing Street, one of the things is I was and get the messages from the Prime Minister, from Murdoch to the Prime Minister. That's in the public interest. That shit should be public. But this is not in the public interest. So it's not the act of hacking. It's the invasion of it's the privacy invasion, and it's breaking the law. Okay, it's committing criminal acts. But Piers Morgan, CNN's little starlet, I happen to know one of his tricks, which is he hired a mimic who could mimic the voices. Now dig this. I've never said this in public. I'm saying it to you. Screw it. I was going to save it for something, but this is a wonderful occasion. Piers Moron hired a mimic to make phone calls, who would call up the phone companies when people had, the messaging services at the phone company, like AT&T or whatever, and there's BT, and he would say, this is Sir Paul McCartney, and I can't seem to get my messages. And they say, well, sir, you have to dial blah 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 and change your passcode. I don't. This is Sir Paul, I said, and I want you to, change, give me my damn password or whatever the hell, punk, right? And so, of course, it's so some small guy's thinking, ooh, cool, it's Paul McCartney. Oh, my God. And then they could tell, just right now. Well, I have to call my supervisor. Right now, sir. Don't call your supervisor. I want to hear it right now. I don't want to hear this. And they would get the passwords or whatever by faking these celebrities' names, and and then of course, and so it's a double scam fraud. it's a breaking rocks on a chain gang crime, which is why Piers is here hosting CNN, because if he does go back to England, they will frickin' handcuff him at Heathrow. He's a criminal. Now CNN says we don't, what's happening in England has no effect on us, Bob. No, Morgan is a criminal, and not only that, but a scum journalist, a liar, a sleazeball, makes up the news. The other thing is that Morgan did is he literally ran what he knew were faked photographs. Okay, Morgan ran. Well, first of all, he did insider trading. He would take information from his finance columnists, and when a finance columnist says buy this stock, the stock's going to go up. Well, because he's the editor, he was the publisher, the editor of the paper, he would read the column, go buy the stock, the paper would hit the next morning, the stock would go up, and he'd pocket the money. Now, in the United States, you would go to prison forever, and then when you're dead, they throw your corpse in prison, and you'd still serve time if you did that in the United States. In Britain, that was not against the law. They said, oh, that was not nice. He was reprimanded. He's a criminal, okay? And he's still and the crimes, he's a multiple criminal. And that's what they call journalism. And then he ran photos of British troops torturing an Iraqi. Now that sounds like he's doing some serious journalism, except that it was British troops who were goofing around in Britain with one of their dark-skinned friends taking fake pictures. And what it did was it did two things. One, there really were cases of brutality by troops that go there, that were in Iraq. And it discredits the real and serious material is number one. To me, that was really a terrible crime. And the second, he didn't even apologize. He said, oh, well, the photos may be fake, but they kind of illustrate an important point. What? The photos are fake? But he didn't even say, oh my God, I didn't realize he didn't even pretend he didn't pretend to say, oh, I didn't know they were fake. Oh my God. Instead, it was like, well, can you imagine? This is, and the crime. Now I have to tell you, moron would not get a job on, doing local cricket announcing in Britain at this time. He would be in prison, and yet he's given prime time on CNN. And what is his qualification? Dancing with the Stars or whatever it was, Dancing with Fat Guys, whatever it is that he did. I mean, that's it. In other words, CNN was not even interested in the fact that he was once a newspaper editor. Mm-hmm. That didn't mean anything. He said he was a judge on America's Got Talent, which is questionable. I guess because he could lie about that too. So what's happening now is with Murdoch, what you hear in Britain is only a fragment of the reality. They're talking about influence by Britain. No, there was deal making, and I have it on tape with Murdoch. There is crime, and I have it on tape with morons people. And the worst that they try to do to me is, I can't blame. One thing I'll say about Piers moron is that in a way the worst he did to me was try to get me laid, but he wanted the pictures. That's pretty creepy. But it was I don't want to reveal any personal details.
We'll take a break. That was a hell of a fucking segment there, that last one.
Yeah, it was.
You're gonna get me in trouble, but I don't particularly give a shit because.
Yeah, no, I said because I'm gonna have to come up and kill you now because if this gets broadcast in the U.S., I'm toast. Right. But I'm already pretty toasty. So. Right.
And of course, you just said you're gonna kill me, and I'm recording this, so you're kind of fucked there too.
Right.
Hey, well, why don't we talk about Mitt Romney? I think you like to call him Mittens Romney, and Bain Capital, and the fact that this guy is a corrupt scumbag running for president.
Well, that's a little bit unfair, because I don't know if he's a scumbag. Corrupt, yeah, but and actually, I'm not worried. He's nothing. He's only worth $250 million. He's just the glove puppet. I want to tell you about the guys whose fingers are in the glove. Remember, when they keep saying, oh, Romney has all this money, it's not Bain Capital money. It's not his own this time. So where's all this money coming from? It's coming from a group of hedge fund billionaires who actually supported the Democrats last time. But Paul the Vulture Singer is number one, and Harold the Iceman Simmons. I didn't give the Vulture's name or the Iceman his name. That was by their happy bankers, who and maybe their mothers too. But Paul the Vulture Singer, who has become the number one donor to the New York Republican Party, number one donor to the Romney operation, and number one donor to the GOP Senate campaign. People's now heard about the Kochs, right? Because I wrote about the Kochs in 1998 for The Guardian, did an investigation, and I had to call them the richest guys you've never heard of. Well, now you've heard of them. They ain't nothing compared to Singer and the Iceman, and their other guy, Paul, and another guy named John Paulson. Okay, but you need to know who these guys are who are going to be buying up the White House and Congress. Now, Paul the Vulture Singer, this is where the money for Mitt is coming from. Paul the Vulture Singer, my book, Vulture's Picnic, he's the Uber vulture. I didn't know that when I went after him, that he was going to be Mitten's top donor. And then he's also crucial in the book that's coming out, Billionaires and Ballot Bandits. By the way, if you go to gregpalast.com, you'll get info on both these books, on the Vulture's Picnic and Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, because I had to write that because it was kind of a follow-up to Vulture's Picnic, although you can read them quite separately. And Billionaires and Ballot Bandits is a little easier to read because it has a comic book inside it, a full comic book. And Vulture's Picnic is being turned into a comic book by the greatest comic writer out there, comic book drawer, Derek Robertson, and a feature film. But so don't wait to see the film until Patriot 4. You can still read books. Please read Vulture's Picnic and Billionaires and Ballot Bandits.
Are you serious? They're making a movie?
Yeah, it's going to be a
Matt Damon plays Greg Palast kind of idea.
Eat popcorn, finger your rosary next to you.
Jesus Christ! In that order, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Speaking of Goldfinger, yeah.
Whatever. Keep it slick. And anyway, it's Matt name material, right? And it's though I'm insistent on who's playing Ms. Bad Penny. So at any rate, so Paul the Vulture Singer, right? As we were thinking about hedge fund managers, so Paul the Vulture Singer, who of course, like any vulture, eats when things die. That's how he makes his money. And one of the things that I'm investigating, that's in the book, but I'm also investigating for Nation magazine. Remember them? No, a little dull, but very sincere. And what I'm investigating is that while Mitski Romney has said that he opposed the bailout of the auto industry, that his father was president of Chrysler, right? That he opposed the bailout of the auto industry. His money is coming. The two big funders are Paul Vulture Singer and John Paulson. Those two guys, between them, got $2.5 billion of the bailout money. Two guys. They were the guys who cranked it totally. And they did it by basically holding the government and the industry by the ball bearings. What they did was brilliant. They bought all of GM's auto parts business, which used to be Delco, now it's Delphi Corporation. They bought it from bankruptcy for 22 cents a share. Then when the bailout came along, Obama's boy said, okay, we got a company that'll buy it back from you now, and you can make, oh man, we'll give you a couple $100 million for your trouble. They're all buddies at the same club, right? So we'll give it. And they said, forget it. We want 12 billion. We want 30,000% profit. It's actually more because they didn't even hold the stuff a year, but not an annualized basis. They just want a raw 30,000% profit. And they said, well, you can't do that. And they said, well, what parts are you putting in those? You're saving the auto industry. Are they going to run on skis? They literally said, we will shut down the entire industry, not give you any parts. We'll just shut the plants. They started shutting plants all over America. And they did. And so then the Obama administration quietly said, okay, and gave them 12 billion. They so it came they gave so and they each out of that their personal slice was 2.5 billion. Not actually, I don't want to exaggerate. $900 million for the Vulture, and 1.5 billion for John Paulson. And that's and then so they tithe some of the rip-off. And by the way, just so you know, they ended up closing 21 of the 25 auto parts plants in the U.S. They gave GM the ones that they needed to stay alive. They gave them back to GM because they were losing money. And they said, okay, you can have the ones you need. And then the rest, and they're still controlled. These guys still control most of the auto parts operation, but they've moved the production, almost all of it, to China. And so that's what we got for our bailout money, Chinese parts and those guys. And so Paulson then went out and he bought since everyone's in foreclosure, he bought a house from a Saudi prince in Vail for $45 million. That only left him $1.35 billion. It's just hard to even spend it. But that was nothing. His $1.5 billion hit was nothing compared to the $3 billion he made the year before in 2008. Which is the biggest single salary ever earned by anyone since the pharaoh, Paulson. And he did that by running a scam where he he ran a scam saying he would insure. This is in Billionaires and Ballot Bandits. Some of this is in Vultures Picnic too. So you just have to get both. Billionaires and Ballot Bandits will have this story. Sign up for it. Paulson said that that he would insure billions of dollars in subprime mortgages, which are of course crud, right? That he thought the housing market was going to do well, and he was going to make all this money insuring these things because nothing's going to happen to the housing market, right? This is in 2007 when the thing is flying off a cliff, right? So he gets Goldman Sachs for a fee to go along with this idea that he's going to buy insurance, and they sell it to European banks like Royal Bank of Scotland, Goldman Sachs, and Paulson. And Paulson pretends to put up $200 million towards the insurance, and the other banks put up billions of dollars saying, oh, wow, Paulson's in on this. We're going to make all this money when the housing market revives. Well, of course, the housing market didn't revive. It went right into the toilet. It completely imploded. And the housing and the mortgages that were insured by that Paulson was insuring with these other guys, with these big banks for billions, the insurance sold by policies that were placed by Goldman Sachs, they had the worst mortgages. Those mortgages lost 99% of their value. They just basically it was all crap, complete junk. Now, so how did Paulson make money? The answer was, while he was pretending to be the guy insuring the losses, they weren't insuring homeowners. This was not your normal mortgage insurance where if you're in trouble, your mortgage insurance will pay your mortgage so you can stay in your home. People still lost their homes. He had taken out insurance. He was the insured, not the homeowners. So when the homeowners defaulted, he collected the insurance. So he pretended to put up $200 million, but then when one looked, turns out that he wasn't the guy insuring, he was the insured. It was a total scam. He collected personally $3 billion, $1 billion of it from the Royal Bank of Scotland, which just sent a check. Now, they didn't even know that it was going to him. They thought he was losing with them. They didn't know that they were writing a check to their own partner, that he was on both sides of the deal. So they sent a check for nearly $1 billion, 800 and some million dollars to Goldman Sachs, sent it to Paulson after they took a slice, Goldman. And then, so what happened to the Royal Bank of Scotland? They had to be taken over by the Bank of England. Second time in history that's happened. The first time, Scotland had to give up its sovereignty as well. So Now they give up their sovereignty to Paulson, not the British Crown, right? So the British taxpayers and the Scottish taxpayers paid for this whole scam, and people in America still lost their homes because they never got the insurance. It was waylaid by Paulson. These are the guys behind Romney. Now, why would they back Romney? Two reasons. Because remember, these guys have been backing the Democrats. I just want to remind you that before. And by the way, Paul Singer gets a lot of good press because he's the guy who's bankrolling the whole gay marriage thing because his son is gay and wants to marry another guy, right? So he's backing gay marriage in the U.S. And everyone's talking what a wonderful guy he is because he's no. It's God, my French is awful. Was droit du seigneur, right? It's the right of the Lord to sleep with any of the virgins on his property. And so it's just that his son wants to sleep with this guy and get married. So it's just Lord of the Manor has to change the law to make that happen. There's nothing about progressive. And then, of course, he's backing all these guys who want to have constitutional amendments that will allow you to beat and flail gay people or whatever. But the big thing is that these guys got a tax break for these deals. They use what's called in the U.S. carried interest tax loophole. So they actually pay a low tax rate on these scams. And Obama, to his credit, wants to close those loopholes because it only goes to it's the only people who get this carried interest gimmick are basically billionaire hedge fund speculators. No one else gets this. And people like Mitt Romney, Mittens, he gets the reason he paid. People are saying, well, why didn't he pay any taxes or next to nothing on his $250 million and his? The answer is this tax loophole, and they want it, and Obama wants to close it. But the other thing is that Obama has gone after Singer and his vulture operations because it's Singer who's gone after these third world nations like the Congo, a debt collection operation where he gets, for a couple $1 million, for example, for $10 million, he bought a bunch of debt from the Congo. And now he's collected $400 million already on his $10 million from the Congo, the poorest nation in the world. I was just in the Congo. I've been all over the world, as we mentioned. I was investigating there. And Obama wants to. Now, does Obama suddenly care about poor people? Does he suddenly care about people in the Congo? No, because while he's suing the people in the Congo, Paul the Vulture Singer, he's also suing the big New York banks, and he's shafted them in Greece, where he and Romney. Now, many people don't realize this. Romney was speculating in Greek bonds during the whole crisis with Singer. They're also business partners, and while everyone agreed to a bailout in Europe. With Greece, right? The Greek people are literally dying. I mean, they got 1 in 4 people are unemployed. You have people committing suicide all over the place because they're suddenly destroyed and everything's gone. And the banks are, basically, sucking the blood out of Greece. But the banks are also giving some blood. They agreed to an 80% write down of the face value of their debts. So, but Paul Singer, Romney, who was handling Romney's money, said, screw you. I'm not taking a loss at all. And he paid like 30 cents on the dollar. He demanded 100% plus interest. He said, or I bring down the entire financial system of the planet. The Greek government paid him every dime he asked for. Every dime. So in other words, every bank in Europe, the U.S. Treasury, everyone got 20%. He got 100%. Only Singer and his partners, including Romney. Only Singer. And so Obama went into court and said, this stuff has got to stop. He's trying to stop them from ripping off Argentina. And I have to tell you, the Council of Argentina called me, the ambassador, and said he was shocked that Obama would actually take this position. And so was I, even though he's funding Obama's enemy. Put some perspective on it. He's screwing up the big New York banks who are still behind Obama. Remember, Obama was the banker's boy. And in 2008, Robert Rubin and Citibank, Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan, all these guys backed Obama. He got 5-1 money against McCain. The big commercial bank money and investment bank money, the New York center banks all backed Obama. Okay. So They all backed Obama. And now, so what you have is a titanic battle between the hedge fund speculator vultures, rip-off artists like Paulson, and the greedy but somewhat this side of the law, investment banks, which feel threatened by the hedge fund speculators who don't care if they bring down the whole house of cards down on everyone. See, the banks need those government structures in place, or they're doomed. And these guys are suing the banks, blocking the banks, taking their money, and of course they just ripped them off, right? Remember that the billions of dollars in that housing scam came from those banks. The banks got murdered by Paulson and Singer, the Vultures deal in the auto industry, because they take all the money. So what's happening is that you have this titanic battle between Romney's hedge fund, basically. In the rest of the world, they'd be considered criminals. What they do is criminal in other parts of the world, including Canada. But in the United States, they're wealth creators versus Obama and the banking establishment.
Listen,
So
when you're blackmailing the complete financial structure of the earth, how is that not crimes against humanity?
well,
That's up there with anything that anyone has ever done.
and well, you have to understand, and it's not just you. One reason I went to the Congo, just so you know, is that I insisted. I told BBC. They said, "Well, you can do this story without going to the Congo." I said, "No, I want people to see the faces of the victims, cholera victims." Singer was taking money that was earmarked to clean up the water systems to end the cholera epidemic in the Congo. I wanted people to meet the cholera victims. So when we talk about crimes against humanity, I wanted you to meet the humans who are the victims of the crime. One thing I've said is that there's no such thing as a victimless billionaire. These guys, yes, it's a crime, and I want you. That's why I want you to go, read Vultures Picnic, read Billionaires and Ballot Bands, because you got to meet not only who these characters are and how they make their money. I'm tired of just talking about the 1%. You know their names: Paul the Vulture Singer, John Paulson, Iceman Simmons, all these guys, how they make their money, and who are the victims of how they made their money. And that's all of us. And yeah, I mean, what they did to Greece, but even the whole fight, right, so that's why Obama and the banks went in to court, to U.S. federal court, and said, these guys have got to be stopped. And that's what they can't handle, because that Hillary Clinton, who, and if you read Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, you'll read why I believe she should be breaking rocks on a chain gang. But nevertheless, she actually instigated it. She went into court and said, they're bringing down, they're not only that, but they're acting as their own foreign, what's the use of the U.S. State Department if we have financiers running around basically determining the foreign policy of the world because they got the money, they're controlling the money flow. So Hillary Clinton personally and Barack Obama personally used extraordinary constitutional powers, which don't exist, by the way, in Canada, it's an unusual thing that under the U.S. Constitution, the president with the Secretary of State can go into court and say, what these people are doing is impeding the foreign policy, the conduct of foreign policy by the president, and they've got to stop. So they can't have Obama stay there. He's got to go because he's in their way. And again, I'm not standing up for him and saying, "Oh, Obama's a man for all seasons," because he's doing this at the behest of the banks. But your choice is between Obama's greedsters, creepy greedsters, and Romney's creepy, dangerous greedsters. I'm a journalist. I'm not taking sides in this contest, but it's, wow. I mean, you got to meet these. And I go out and I meet these guys. Again, the one advantage of having worked at Milton Friedman, I go and meet some of these guys, and they're slick. They're slick. They're not, they don't come off like Christopher Walken playing Satan. They don't. They come off as the nicest, most smartest people you've ever met. They care about gay rights, and they all belong to little human rights groups and save the pigeons and kiss the whales and whatever. But they'd also run over your grandmother if she was standing on a nickel.
Well, that's why they have to pay their penance.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'm looking. Who's driving by out there in that black car looking at me? No, I'm kidding.
Right.
I do get a lot of. I mean, Paul the Vulture Singer, one of his guys.
There's ice cream truck that's been sitting outside my place for about the last half hour.
Yeah, there's a weight issue. Paul the Vulture Singer, one of his goons called the BBC TV and said, "We have a file on Greg Palast."
Big deal.
I said, "Yeah, of course. Everyone can read my file. Just read Vulture's Picnic. I show you everything. I mean, this."
Hey, we got to take a break and do our final segment on the flip. Hell of a show, Greg. Not your typical Palast interview.
Well, it's hell, but hell is part of it. It's very important to have a little hell once in a while. Yeah. In fact, I just say God just showed up at the door, by the way, during the break. I kid you not. The Jehovah's Witnesses with a copy of Awake in the Watchtower. They obviously must have been listening to the show and say, "Holy shit, this is like an emergency delivery." It's like they were like transponded by higher authority from their place in Brooklyn.
Well, they saw the JW symbol in the air, and like the bat signal, they had to send a guy down.
Yeah, so I got Awake and the Watchtower. The Bible, what makes it unique? Well, I'll tell you what makes it unique. You have a publisher, man, that can't be beat, and a marketing plan.
Yeah, God, a credible business partner who doesn't take a cut.
Yeah, well, in Billionaires and Ballot Banners, I think I also use the same thing in Vulture's Picnic. I keep plugging my books. That's okay. But
well, I'm not.
I talk about doing an undercover investigation of Pat Robertson, who is, the Lord, who is also partner of the Lord. And I asked him, since God told him to run for president, he said, back in '88. And so I said, with a campaign manager like that, how could you lose? And though his answer is sharp, he's, by the way, one of the most brilliant men I've ever met in life, which is like sick and serious and weird and horrible, which is that. And basically he said God told him to run but not win, which is not a Shaggy Dog story. It's it was so he could build a mailing list of the faithful, the Christian coalition. So there you are. Anyway, yeah, so...
well, we're all ministers, as it says in the Bible. Let's talk about Fukushima. You've probably heard about it.
Yeah.
And it actually links in with the Deepwater Horizon oil blow-up, or what do you call that?
Yeah, blowout.
A blowout, yeah. So tie the two in together, and what's the truth behind Fukushima?
The truth is not what you heard on Puss Moron CNN with Anderson Cooper, because when the truth was handed out, Cooper was in the gym and with Sanjay. And so the truth was, they give you this cockamamie story about Fukushima, that it was a 9/0 earthquake and the plant was designed for an 8/0 earthquake, and who could have figured this? And so the plant melted down. They're still melting, which is a great story if you fucking believe in fairy tales, and I like to, but not when it comes to radiation. And so, no, there was no 9/0 earthquake at Fukushima. Yes, there was a 9/0 earthquake in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and if those of you on the West Coast certainly know that something that's 100 miles away in the water at 9/0 is not 9/0 by the time it gets to you 100 miles distance. It's more like 7 to 8 on the Richter scale. Actually, we use a more, and in the book, in Vulture's Picnic, you'll see more what's called Galileos, which is what the movers and shakers experts actually use, not Richter.
Okay.
And
I was curious about this, Greg, because if you were at the epicenter of an earthquake in the ocean, that's where it would be the most calm.
Yeah, but for wave-like, because it starts off. You got the earth moving, then the wave builds. But the shock should have been withstood by the plant. But they faked the earthquake proofing tests. And how do I know that? Because I have the notes of the engineers. And the engineers, Stone and Webster, okay, which now goes under the alias Shaw. I've done a racketeering investigation then. I used to be a racketeering investigator before as a reporter, and for the government. And we got the inside shit on these guys. We got the inside notebooks and everything. They're the big nuclear plant maker and builder. And you have to do what's called seismic qualification, stopping if there's an earthquake. And by the way, if you fake the seismic qualification, it's not just earthquakes, because a lot of things shake a building, like a love letter from Al Qaeda. So so being able to withstand a seismic event like an earthquake is no minor crap. And they faked the tests. Okay, they faked the tests worldwide. Now, Stone and Webster, I put this in front of a federal jury in New York. They were found guilty, and they were put out of business. And then they came back to life, as shape-shifting corporations do, as Shaw Corporation, which is, building all 4 U.S. nuclear plants that Obama has approved, is going to build the 9 nuclear plants approved in Britain. And I haven't looked at what the scene is in Canada, but they are, they're a big construction company that's involved in all these pipeline operations, et cetera. So, and they're given the contract to rebuild Fukushima. And so it's very important to know that these are the same characters. And then, of course, some of these same companies are involved in the disaster in the Gulf Coast. But that's a whole, read the book. It's too much otherwise. But Fukushima, you have to understand, they lied to you. And of course, CNN swallows it whole. And basically it's press release journalism. And then they also told, don't worry, because they have these backup diesel generators which will flood the plants when the power goes out. They'll flood the plants with water and they won't melt down. They melt it down anyway. Oh, so what happened? How come they melt down anyway? Oh, the tsunami drowned the diesel generators, the emergency diesel generators. Well, hey, I guess they figure that we don't have Google Earth, do they? Because if you look at Google Earth and you look at the photos of the plant, you notice that they never showed you photos from inside the plant? They have, now for security reasons, they have video cameras going all over every inch of those plants all the time. If those plants are flooded out, how come we never got the pictures? Because they weren't. They weren't flooded out, the diesel generators. What happened was they committed suicide. What I mean by that is that the diesel generators are not, they're old cruise ship engines which cannot be snapped on in 10 seconds to 12,000 RPM because their crankshafts snap. They're not designed. They could have used Christmas tinsel around the plant, around the Daiichi plants at Fukushima. They could have used tinsel. It would have had the same effect. It's all decoration. If those plants go, you're fried. You're done, fucker. So it's a lie. And the problem is...
Well, who does the quality testing on these things, Greg? Are those not the people to be looking at right now?
Yeah, because the quality testing is done by the power companies themselves with their builder, like Stone & Webster, now under the alias Shaw. In the case of Tokyo, yeah. And what we do is they have to certify. They certify. Their engineers and their executives put their names on it and saying, this is truthful. See, because we now, this whole thing, and it started with Al Gore, by the way, in the U.S., who said we have to not mistrust business. Why all these regulators inspecting? We can just get reports. If they sign their names, we have to trust people. And that was Al Gore, by the way. And that's when it started. Not under George Bush, under Al Gore, under Bill Clinton. Al Gore ran something called Deregulation Committee, re-regulation, reinventing government re-regulation committee. And so they signed their own stuff. But this guy, his name is Bob Weasel, who was the guy that signed off on the fake earthquake tests. And Weasel, when he was ordered to do so by the top company executives at the power company and at Stone & Webster, and he said he wasn't going to do it. And he went so far as to actually take the federal regulations off the shelf, big thick book, and showed them that they were telling him to commit a crime. And they just smiled and, said, we know you'll do the right thing. In other words, lie. And he did. So I have both the original report saying that the plant flunked the tests and the report saying that they filed it passed. It's all a lie. It's all a lie about the diesel generators. We knew about that too. They fake those tests so that they could get away with it. What they do is they run these things at low speed. They don't run them under real emergency conditions to test them because they can't even handle a simple test. So it's not, just understand, I'm not for or against nuclear power. Forget all that crap. I was just talking to my friend George Monbiot, who's a big one of the greenies who supports nuclear power, which I think is nuts. And the reason I say it's nuts, it's not theoretical. It's not whether nuclear power is greener or safer than coal or gas or, whatever, bicycle power. The issue is that it's billions and billions of easy squeezy money from the public and government, and you will get the criminal corporate element in there every time. Shaw Construction, you will get serial liars, fraudsters, and con men, including Tokyo Electric Power. And I have documents that I have in Vultures Picnic, not only about Fukushima, but what I have is documents about the plant that was being built in South Texas, in which all these companies lied about the cost of the plant by billions of dollars. So they're not going to tell you the truth about safety. And who do they bring in? Who's building this plant in South Texas? Tokyo Electric Power. The excuse was, those are the guys who are real pros. American nuclear companies, everyone knows, are full of shit and can't do anything. So we'll bring in the real professionals from Tokyo, right? There you go.
Really funny. Your business partners to the north, Canada, and the CANDU reactors, we make the best in the world. And yet you outsource it to TEPCO.
Well, here's the deal, man. No one's going to actually build anything. They're going to spend billions of dollars on holes in the ground. Then they're going to blame the greenies for stopping it. No one intends to actually build a nuclear plant. It's too financially dangerous for these guys. They'll just take the money and run. And by the way, I've been pushing my latest book and the one about to come out, Vultures Picnic, which you should take a look at, and Billionaires and Ballot Bandits. But my first book was called The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, and it's banned from Canada.
Yeah, it's banned.
And it's very important to understand, so get a hold of it, because I refuse to take out my chapter on Canada. And on one of your most vicious, when you talk about billionaires and bandits, probably the most vicious billionaires I've ever run into are fucking Canadians, man. And the mining and gold operators like Peter Monk of Barrick Gold in Toronto. So he sued, here's the story. In Tanzania, Barrick Gold Mining wanted to buy the big gold fields of Tanzania, but they're already being mined by little small miners. They call them jewelry miners. They had little mines and they had permits for them. But the property had been purchased by another Canadian group of characters, Sutton Gold, and Sutton wanted to sell to Barrick. So Barrick agreed to buy them, but they couldn't take the property while there are all these gold miners with permits on it. So they simply ran a bulldozer over the property and filled in all their mines and said, okay, that's it. And the only thing is that there were still 50 miners inside their mines when they sealed up the holes, 50 miners buried alive. Now, I reported that in The Guardian. Peter Monk and Barrick Gold Mining sued The Guardian. And and then they said, listen, you got to back off because we're ruined if they go ahead with this suit. And then you can't. The British libel law is almost as bad as Canadian libel law. And which is, not about the truth. It's about who has the power and the money. And it's used, it's basically privatized censorship in Canada and Britain. So I said, I'm not backing down because one of my sources had been based on this. He came out and said, I don't out my source. He outed himself, said I'm one of the sources of the story, a lawyer, Tundu Lissu. And the Tanzanian government charged him with sedition. So I wasn't going to back off the story. And I actually told Barrick Gold Mine that I'd fly to Vancouver and they could sue me there. And I was going to go after them. I refused to back down, and I did. And I want to thank the Council of Canadians and Maud Barlow, who stood up and said they murdered these people. Canadian gold mining companies murdered these people and covered it up and covered them up. And they're trying to bury Greg Palast, the reporter. for reporting it. So I refused to back down. And they never did sue. But my publisher, Penguin, of course, was scared to death that they would be sued in Canada. They were threatened. I refused to take out the material on Barrick Gold Mining and on Canada and the involvement. And by the way, who's on the board? Brian Mulroney, right? And the money, the Canadian government put up the money for the murderous operation for Barrick Gold, 175 million Canadian dollars for Barrick Gold. And you have a totally corrupted system there. And, it's poisoned by these gold mining companies. And I refused to back down on it. And but a French-Canadian publisher put out a book in French called Canada Noir, which quoted me. They got sued by Barrick Gold Mining, and I will tell you happily that a Canadian court did throw out the suit by Barrick and made Barrick pay the authors and the publisher of Canada Noir $7 million for harassment with this suit. So we can talk about this. And I will say, I want to give credit to also Canadian Broadcasting Radio, which was not afraid to talk about the killings in Tanzania. So
that was CBC.
CBC and CBC Radio.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's still scary for a lot of people because they lost, these guys are scary. But the truth is that now, because of that, before the authors of Canada Noir won against Barrick. So, of course, Penguin was scared to death about publishing The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. But a lot of Canadians have read it because it kind of obviously dripped across the borders. And, in fact, Chapters was carrying it, the U.S. edition. So if you go to gregpalast.com and say, listen, I'm a Canadian who got shafted out of my copy of Best Democracy, I'll give it to you for my cause for a few bucks or something. Go to gregpalast.com, send me a note. Say, I want my book. And not screw the censors. And I appreciate the opportunity to mention that. So go to gregpalast.com, get the information, and I'll send you the Canadian story, which ultimately was published. It was published by the way, First Frank magazine, which then backed off. Now they went back. Once I came up with the video evidence of the bodies being exhumed, they refused to be intimidated by Barrick Gold and Peter Monk and the scoundrels in your government.
Vultures picnic. I think the easy question is, who are the vultures? But I'm gonna flip the question. What is the picnic?
The pic is us. As in fact, I mentioned that when I talked to you about going to the University of Chicago, being offered a job by Goldman Sachs, and then it ends where there's a birthday party for one of the hedge fund vultures. These speculators who want the auto industry to die, the Congo to die, who want the housing market to die, and that's how they make their money. They make their billions. And I say, well, I could always go, I could have joined them at their Vultures picnic, and I could still go, but as the food. That's what we are. We're the food. They're the carnivores. We're the food. And that's what the story is about, is how these 1%ers pick us apart. But it's not the usual stuff. This all, and I take you with me on the investigation, dead ends, bad booze, good sex. But the important thing is, here's what these guys really, really do, from, just evil bribery, babes, and then there's also BP and its blowouts. So the picnic, we're the lunch. We're lunch for these guys.
Would you autograph one of these books, Greg, and give it away to one of my audience members?
Absolutely. In fact, I'll tell you what. I'm going to give you 3 books. I'm going to give you Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, which as soon as it comes out, which is new. Vultures Picnic, because I think you ought to have that one. And then I'm a special bust the censorship wall copy of The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. And I'll be thrilled to send that all to you signed. And in fact, whatever listener, I can personalize it to your listeners, I'd be thrilled to do that.
Absolutely, Greg. What a great promotion. We'll set that up. Greg, you've dropped the name throughout the show, but let's remind the audience where to go and where to buy the book.
All these books can be bought at, except for Best Democracy, which is censored. You can go to www.gregpalast.com. That's GREGPALAST, and get the download versions of this and my films for BBC and my investigative reports. And of course, just sign up for the free reports and stuff. And the comic book's coming out soon that you don't want to miss.
Do you have a preference as to where people purchase the book?
Shoplifting is okay. I get the same royalty. But please do. I mean, you can always, if you want to, go to gregpalast.com. We do have a foundation, and if you want to make a donation, get a signed book there, that would be great. That's also tax deductible even in Canada.
There you go. Wow. Well, Greg Palast, you're the fly on the wall. That's you.
Ow, now I'm the smudge on the paper. A couple shows for if you cut it right.
Greg Palast, thank you very much for being on the program today.
Okay. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait till I get the pot of it. We'll put it out here too.